I am Rachel Elwood, 31 years old woman. I work as a dental assistant in Portland and recently moved back into my childhood home after mom's stroke. What happened next changed everything. The last time I heard my mom laugh, a real, unfiltered, from-the-belly laugh, we were standing shoulder to shoulder in her kitchen, flour on our hands, pecans spilled across the counter, and a burnt pie crust smoking in the oven. Thanksgiving less than a year ago. She looked tired, sure, but there was light behind her eyes. She still recognized me. She still called me honey and hummed Patsy Cline while she stirred batter. Back then I thought I had time, thought we all did. But time's a liar. A month later she forgot to turn off the stove, then she forgot my birthday, then she called me by my sister's name, Tessa, and looked confused when I corrected her. It spiraled so fast, like her mind was sliding down a hill she couldn't climb back up. When she fell down the porch steps and shattered her wrist, I didn't even hesitate. I left my apartment, my job, and my boyfriend, all of it, and moved back into the house I swore I'd never return to, because someone had to take care of her. Someone had to watch, not just visit, and God knows Tessa wasn't going to do it. Tessa had always been the shining one, the planner, the spreadsheet, the polished smile. I was the afterthought, the one who went to art school and didn't finish, the one who never quite lived up to her potential, as Mom used to phrase it, kindly but still. But when things got hard, Tessa was nowhere to be found. I called, I texted. At first she responded, "I'm traveling for work, the kids have finals. Mom gets agitated when I come, it's better if I don't." Always excuses, always framed like compassion. But here's the thing, I was there every day, and I saw it happening, the slow erosion of a woman who once raised 2 girls on her own, the fatting of someone who used to run PTA meetings and patch our scraped knees. She started sleeping with her shoes on. She talked to shadows in the corners of the living room. She forgot how to write her name. I gave up everything to be there for her, and I never once regretted it. Until the pills went missing. It was a Wednesday, rain tapping the windows, Mom curled under a quilt on the couch. I opened the fridge to grab her meds. She had this system where she kept a note with her dosage times taped inside the door, and the bottles weren't there, not a single one. Instead, there was a sticky note. "Call Tessa, she knows." My stomach turned. At first I thought maybe Tessa picked them up from the pharmacy. Maybe there was a mix-up, but something in me, something I hadn't let myself feel since we were kids, kicked in. That cold awareness that my sister could smile and lie at the same time. I checked the cabinet, nothing, her bedroom drawers, the trash, no sign of the bottles. Mom just looked up at me when I asked and said, "The nurse gave them to me already." We didn't have a nurse. I called the pharmacy. They said her prescription hadn't been refilled in over 2 weeks. That's when the panic began. I checked her mail, bills, overdue notices, an overdraft warning from the bank. I opened Mom's laptop, something she hadn't touched in months, and tried logging into her online banking. Denied. So I called the bank, I explained the situation, her diagnosis. They hesitated, said I wasn't authorized, and I wasn't, not officially. That was Tessa. She was the financial power of attorney, had been for years. Mom always said, "Tessa's good with money, she'll keep things in order." But something about this didn't feel orderly. After pleading and faxing over medical records, the bank rep finally agreed to read off the last 5 major transactions. $4,800 transfer to Tessa Hanley. $7,200 withdrawal memo, family tuition. $3,000 transfer memo, emergency medical. $5,500 withdrawal, no memo. $60,000 wire transfer to a private account. I nearly dropped the phone. That was over $80,000 in less than 4 months. I called Tessa. No answer. I texted her. "Where is Mom's money? Why did you take it?" Hours later, she replied, "It's complicated, I'll explain soon." She didn't explain, she didn't even follow up. I called again the next morning and again and again. Voicemails, silence. So I did the thing I had been avoiding for years. I asked her to come over. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I just said, "Mom misses you, she asked for you, come by." She showed up on Saturday wearing designer sunglasses and a trench coat like she was walking into a courtroom instead of her mother's living room. She hugged Mom, smiled like nothing had changed. Mom looked at her, confused, and said, "You're the nurse, right?" Tessa froze. I watched her flinch just a little, then brush it off. We went into the kitchen. That's when I asked, point blank, "Where's the money?" She didn't deny it, she didn't even act surprised. Instead, she sighed, I used it for the kids. College is expensive and Mom would have wanted that. Would've, I said, did she say that? Tessa looked down, not exactly. So you decided for her, you took it, without asking. She wasn't in her right mind. Then why were you still letting her sign checks? Silence. She tried to pivot. You don't know what it's like raising two teenagers, managing a household. I've always been the one holding everything together. And I've been the one wiping her mouth, changing her diapers, watching her forget my name. She stood there, arms crossed, all that elegance stripped down to cold calculation. I'll fix it, she said. No, you won't. I walked into the guest room, shut the door, and opened Mom's file cabinet. I pulled out every record I could find, tax forms, medical reports, copies of the POA document, and I opened my laptop. That was the night I decided to fight. Not because of the money. Because of what she took from Mom, her dignity, her security, her peace. That was the night I realized that my sister wasn't just selfish. She was dangerous. And if no one else was going to stop her, I would. When I filed the initial complaint, I expected bureaucracy, maybe a letter, maybe a quiet investigation that fizzled out before it could matter. What I didn't expect was how fast everything would ignite once the truth touched the surface. My attorney, a man named Grant Ellison, was calm in a way that unsettled me. He had handled elder abuse cases for over a decade. He'd seen daughters forge signatures, sons drain retirement funds, even neighbors pose as caregivers just to gain access to bank accounts. But something about my case made him lean in closer. She thought you wouldn't fight, he told me after reading through the documents and listening to the voicemail from Tessa. Most people don't, they're too tired, too hurt, but you, he paused, tapping the notebook photo I had emailed him, you're about to ruin her entire chessboard. I nodded, but inside I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. I was still waking up 3 times a night to check if Mom had wandered from bed, still pouring her orange juice in a sippy cup so she wouldn't spill, still washing her hair, gently combing out knots while she asked me if I was someone named Patty, a woman I'd never heard of. I was her full-time caregiver. And now I had to become her full-time defender too. We filed the petition within a week, elder financial abuse, request to revoke Tessa's power of attorney, motion to freeze joint accounts. I had to sign more papers than I could count, and each one felt like slicing open a scar. Tessa didn't respond for 5 days. Then she filed her own motion. A countersuit accusing me of emotional instability, claiming I had isolated our mother and was manufacturing allegations out of sibling jealousy. She accused me of trying to erase her children's future out of spite. It was like being punched in the throat. She didn't just deny what she'd done. She weaponized me, my sacrifices, my stress, my grief, and twisted them into motives. And just like always, she used polished words and clean formatting and legal terminology that painted her as the victim. I wanted to scream. But instead, I documented everything. Every medication I administered, every dollar I spent, every time I had to help Mom to the bathroom or coax her into eating when she thought the food was poison. I kept track. Because I knew Tessa would try to bury the truth under performance. She always had. The first court appearance felt like walking into a theater, and I was the only one who didn't know my lines. Tessa sat beside her attorney, legs crossed, face serene. Her teenage daughter Ava sat behind her, staring at the floor. I tried not to meet her eyes. I didn't want her to see me broken. Grant spoke clearly, professionally. He laid out the transaction trail, the unauthorized withdrawals, the forged memos, the missing funds. He introduced the journal photo, the handwriting sample, the testimony from Miss Janine, who had driven 2 hours just to sit in that witness chair and tell the court Helen Elwood was afraid of her own daughter. When Tessa's turn came, she stood. And she smiled. My mother was confused. She offered the money. She wanted to support her grandchildren. I'm sorry her condition makes that difficult to prove, but I did nothing wrong. No remorse, no hesitation. Just enough truth to dress the lie. After the hearing in the parking lot, she caught me near my car. You don't know what you're doing, she hissed. You think this will end the way you want. You're not stable, Rachel. You're alone, no husband, no kids, no career. I'll make sure the court sees that. And then she said it, the line that turned everything from courtroom drama to war. I'll fight for custody, you're not fit to make decisions, and when I win, I'll move Mom out of that house and into a real facility. I stood there stunned. She wasn't bluffing. She was going to try to take everything, Mom, the house, maybe even my sanity if I let her. That night, I didn't cry. I went home, I tucked Mom into bed. I watched her for an hour, her breath shallow, her fingers twitching like she was playing piano in her dreams. And then I turned on every light in the kitchen and opened the drawer where she used to keep her old journals. The blue notebook was still there. I had already photographed the most important page, but I began reading more. I flipped to the entry dated 3 weeks before her fall. Tessa came by again, she asked me to sign something, said it was for tuition, I said no. I told her I needed the money for my care, she looked disappointed, I don't know if she heard me, I don't know if she'll ask again. I took a breath. Then I flipped further. Rachel made me eggs today, she smiles less now, I think she knows what's happening, I hope she stays, I feel safe when she's here. I lost it. Right there on the kitchen floor. Because in all the mess, all the anger, all the noise, that one sentence reached through the fog like a hand on my shoulder. I feel safe when she's here. The next day, I filed for emergency guardianship. And this time, I didn't do it in fear. I did it with clarity. Tessa was going to try to rewrite the story. But I had the pages she didn't know existed. And I wasn't going to let her turn Mom into collateral again. There's something you learn quickly when you become your parents' caregiver, a quiet truth that nobody tells you until it's too late. The hardest part isn't watching them fade, it's realizing how invisible you've become in the process. You become a ghost in your own life, friends stop calling, no one asks how you're doing, only how she's doing. Days blend together, meals, medicine, wandering, bathing, coaxing, crying. You forget what it feels like to live without a schedule dictated by someone else's needs. But that blue notebook, it gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Power. It was proof in her own handwriting, it was her voice scribbled but sharp, clear, conscious. That small spiral-bound book could swing the entire case. My lawyer, Grant, lit up when he saw the additional entries. If we get a handwriting analyst to confirm this, and a witness to vouch for the notebook's presence prior to cognitive decline, we have her intent. That's the key. I thought of Miss Janine immediately. She remembered everything, the old afternoons, the way Mom used to read from that very notebook like it was a diary. She even recalled Mom once saying, if something happens, Rachel will find what she needs in the drawer by the sink. That was all we needed. We had a plan. Then everything blew up. It was a Saturday. I had gone to the pharmacy to refill Mom's antipsychotic meds. They had to be signed for in person, and when I got back, the front door was ajar. At first, I thought maybe I forgot to lock it. But the minute I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The kitchen drawers had been pulled out and left dangling. The desk in the guest room was emptied. Papers were scattered across the floor. The safe in Mom's closet, the one I kept locked with a private code, had been forced open, not even subtle. The hinge was broken clean off. And the blue notebook. Gone. I froze. Then I ran to the living room. Mom was still asleep on the couch, curled up in a quilt, breathing slow but steady, thank God. But someone had been inside, someone had searched and knew exactly what they were looking for. I called Grant, my voice shaking. She took it, I whispered, she must have Tessa. He was quiet for a moment, then he said the words I didn't want to hear. We need to call the police. The report was filed, an officer came by, dusted for prints, asked questions, but there was no forced entry, no clear sign of how they got in, and nothing stolen of monetary value, as the officer phrased it. Just an old notebook. And a piece of my heart. He wrote it off as probably misplaced, said maybe Mom moved it and forgot, that it wasn't uncommon. I wanted to scream. But instead I walked back into the kitchen, stood in the silence and whispered, she took it. She took everything. That night I didn't sleep. I sat with my laptop, opened every file I had saved, the scanned images of the pages, the court documents, the testimony draft from Janine, and I asked myself one question. How do I fight someone who controls the narrative? And then I realized, I write my own. That's when I made the video. It was simple, no dramatic music, no filters, just think I know your sister. She used to work for our financial firm in Illinois. She did something similar to my father. We tried to press charges. She disappeared before it went to court. I forwarded it to Grant immediately. He was already assembling a case for pattern behavior, financial abuse in multiple states. This was confirmation. Tessa wasn't just a sister with a lapse in judgment. She was a predator. And now there were witnesses. The story spread further. Caregivers reached out, daughters who had been gaslit, sons who had fought siblings in silence. My inbox became a shrine to unspoken grief. And in the middle of it all was Mom. Still sleeping in the next room. Still calling me by the wrong name. Still trusting me without remembering why. That night, Ava texted me for the first time in months. I saw the video, can I come over? I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the screen, tears burning behind my eyes. Because suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. And the fire Tessa lit. She didn't know it would spread. Not just to me, but to everyone she ever burned. Ava showed up at my door with her hood up, eyes swollen, and a manila envelope clutched in her hands like it was a lifeline. I opened the door slowly, unsure of what she'd say, or whether she'd say anything at all. "Can we talk?" she asked. She didn't look like the girl who used to spend summers twirling through the sprinklers in our backyard. She looked like someone who had been forced to grow up too quickly, someone who had just realized their world had a trapdoor under it. I nodded and stepped aside. She didn't look around when she came in. She knew the layout by heart. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where her mom once braided her hair while Mom sliced peaches for pie. So many memories felt stitched into that room, and now they hung there like ghosts. She placed the envelope between us. "I found this in the laundry room," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was in a box labeled donations. Inside were old check stubs, not just photocopies, originals, dated, signed, and some with Mom's savings written in the memo line. All matched the suspicious transactions I had documented. I looked up at her, stunned. "You brought this to me." She nodded, then bit her lip. I didn't want to believe it, but I've been watching my mom lie for years. I just didn't know she was lying to me too. I swallowed hard. "Ava, this helps more than you know. She said you were making it all up, that you were jealous, that you didn't have a family of your own so you wanted to tear ours apart." I clenched my jaw. That line, "you don't have a family," it had always been Tessa's favorite blade. Quiet, sharp, personal. "I know what she said," I replied softly. "But then I saw the video," Ava said, tears pooling in her eyes. "I saw Nana's handwriting. I remember those loops. She used to leave me notes in my lunchbox." Her voice broke. "That's her, that's real." She looked up at me, and suddenly she wasn't a teenager anymore. She was a girl reaching out for someone to help her make sense of everything. "She lied to me," Ava whispered. "She lied to all of us." She didn't cry, not really, just a few silent tears that slid down her face as she sat there, completely still. I reached across the table and gently placed my hand over hers. "She's your mother," I said. "It's okay to love her, it's okay to be angry too." She stayed for hours that night. We didn't talk much more about Tessa. We talked about Mom, how she used to sing along to the Carpenters while driving, how she always had lemon candies in her purse, how she once knit a lopsided sweater for Ava's birthday and insisted it was intentional asymmetry. We laughed, then we cried. When Ava left, she said one thing before walking out. "If there's a way I can help, I want to." I believed her. But Tessa didn't. Because 3 days later, Grant called me, his voice tight with urgency. "She just filed a motion." My stomach dropped. "What kind?" "Defamation. She's suing you for emotional distress and slander. And brace yourself, she's petitioning for full guardianship of your mother." The room spun. "What?" "She's trying to take her away from me. She's claiming you're emotionally unfit, that you're exploiting your mother for social media attention. She even included stills from your video as evidence." I sat down, stunned. "She's not just defending herself anymore," Grant said. "She's trying to erase you." It felt like someone had knocked the breath out of me. I had done everything right, everything. I kept receipts, testimonies, proof. But Tessa didn't need truth. She needed doubt. In courts, well, they fed on doubt like oxygen. I won't let her take her, I whispered. Grant was quiet for a moment. You may need to go public again, and harder. I shook my head. No, not just public, I want proof, ironclad. That night I turned the house upside down again. I didn't sleep. I dug through every drawer, every photo album, every junk box tucked under old blankets in the attic. At 4:11 a.m. I found something. It was a dusty voice recorder, the kind Mom used to dictate poetry on. She'd carry it around the house when I was little, talking into it like she was a famous author preparing for her memoir. I pressed play. The first 2 recordings were garbled, static, and humming. The third. Tessa asked me again to sign those forms. I told her no. She looked angry. I hope she doesn't come back soon. She always wants something. I sat there shaking. And then I began to sob. Because even in the fog of her disease, Mom had known. She had left me a map. All I had to do was follow it. Tessa had spent years building an empire of appearance, glossy family portraits, curated social media updates, donations to the private school her kids attended, where she chaired fundraisers and wore pearls to board meetings like armor. To everyone else, she was the polished mother, generous, graceful, a pillar of the community. But appearances are paper-thin. And I had matches. After the forged check stubs Ava gave me and the voice recording from Mom's old tape recorder, Grant and I had more than just speculation. We had fraud and intent. And that's when the idea came. You want to go after her reputation, Grant said, reading the fire in my eyes. You want to burn the mask. No, I replied. I want to take the only thing she can't buy back. I want her to lose what she used Mom's money to protect. The kids' school. It was her shrine, her status symbol, her sanctuary. So I made one more video. It wasn't angry, it was quiet, cold, just like her lies. I held up the voice recording. Played a 20-second clip. She asked again about the tuition. I told her no. She said I didn't care about their future, but it's my money for my care. Then I showed the check stubs, side by side with the same dollar amounts on Mom's bank statements, marked education fund and scholarship donation. And I asked one question. If someone builds their legacy on stolen money, is it still a legacy? I didn't tag the school. I didn't need to. The internet did it for me. By morning, the video had 300,000 views. By evening, the school board's inbox was flooded, and the next day I received a message through Grant. The school has begun an internal audit. They are reviewing past donations, verifying compliance, and suspending all pending honors and board memberships involving Mrs. Hanley. Mrs. Hanley. Even that name felt like an insult now. 2 days later, Tessa showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her since the court filed notice of our next hearing. She didn't knock. She banged loud, panicked, like a person whose world was finally fully crumbling. When I opened it, she was already mid-sentence. You vindictive little, how dare you go after my kids? Her voice cracked not with power but with desperation. I stood there, calm as glass. I didn't go after them, I went after you. They just happened to be standing in the castle you built on sand. You don't know what you've done. I do, I said. I stopped you, that's all. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she couldn't. Her mouth trembled. Her eyes, always calculating, darted around like a cornered animal. They've been expelled, she whispered finally. Do you understand that? Expelled because of you. No, I said quietly. Because of what you did, they deserve better than this, better than your version of success. She stepped closer like she wanted to hit me or collapse, I couldn't tell which. You never wanted kids, you don't know what it's like. That hit hard, but not the way she intended. Because she was right. I never wanted kids. But I protected them. Hers. When she couldn't or wouldn't. I looked her straight in the eye. I didn't take your kids, Tessa, you did. And then I shut the door. It took everything in me not to collapse behind it. That night I sat with Mom, her breathing was shallower now, her skin translucent, her words fewer. But her hand still curled into mine. I whispered to her what happened. That Tessa was gone. that she wouldn't hurt us anymore. She didn't reply, she didn't squeeze my hand. But I imagined in some quiet corner of her mind she heard me. And I imagined she felt safe again. Grief is a strange thing. You expect it to hit you like a hammer right at the moment someone dies, but with Mom it crept in slowly like fog under the door. Even though she was still breathing, I had already started grieving months ago. Every time she forgot my name, every time I found her crying in the hallway, unsure of where she was, every time I caught her staring at the backyard like it held a memory she could no longer reach. So when she passed quietly in her sleep, 3 weeks after the final court hearing, it was less of a crash and more like the final whisper of a song already ending. I buried her next to Dad, simple headstone, no fanfare, just her name, 2 dates, and a line I had engraved from her notebook. You are more than enough. That should have been the end. But grief, as it turns out, is never the last chapter. Especially not when your sister was the author of most of your pain. It was a Tuesday when the phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, I almost didn't pick up. Ms. Elwood, the man on the other end, said, "I'm calling from the firm managing your late mother's estate. We've found something you need to be aware of." My body went cold. What is it? There are discrepancies in the deed to the home. It seems the property was refinanced twice under power of attorney, both times during periods that, based on medical records, your mother was already in cognitive decline. I couldn't speak. The signatures appear, forged, we're reviewing them for authenticity now, but legally, if these loans default, which it appears they have, the house is vulnerable to seizure. The house? Mom's house? Our house? I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. After everything I had fought for, the bank accounts, the guardianship, the exposure, Tessa had one last trick hidden in the walls. She had mortgaged the roof over my mother's head, twice, without consent, and now in death Mom was still being exploited. I hung up. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at the wall for a very long time. Then I opened the desk drawer, the same one that once held the blue notebook, and began searching again. There had to be something. A voicemail, a letter, a receipt, anything. At 3:12 a.m. I found it. Mom's old landline still had a voicemail inbox. I hadn't touched it in months. It was mostly telemarketers and pharmacy reminders. But one message stood out, dated just months before her fall. It was Tessa's voice. "Hey Mom, I'm bringing over those forms later today. It's just some refi paperwork, nothing serious. You don't need to read it. Just sign on the yellow tab, okay? I've already filled everything out." My hands were shaking. It was everything. I sent it to Grant the next morning. He moved faster than I'd ever seen. Within days, we had submitted the recording, a request for full deed review, and a civil fraud investigation into the mortgage filings. Then something unexpected happened. The bank responded. They didn't want the PR nightmare. They offered to release the liens. Not out of kindness, out of self-preservation. Tessa's name was already becoming known in legal circles. The Hope Chest project had exploded. More than one elder law advocate had begun citing my story in webinars and caregiver forums, and now the bank, they wanted no part of it. They backed off. The house was mine. Free and clear. But I didn't stay in it. I couldn't. Every room whispered, every hallway echoed. That house was filled with memories, good ones, yes, but they were layered with grief and betrayal like wallpaper you can't peel away. So I sold it. Not out of anger. Out of peace. I used the money to move 2 hours away, bought a small fixer-upper with peeling paint and a creaky porch. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And when I stood in that empty living room on the first night, I whispered, "We made it, Mom." She wasn't there to hear it. But I said it anyway. There's a kind of silence you don't recognize until you've lived in it for a while, not just quiet, but emptiness. That's what the new house felt like at first. No pill timers beeping, no whispery requests for water at 2 a.m., no soft shuffling of slippers on hardwood. Just me, a house too quiet, and grief that no longer knocked before entering. I spent the first few weeks cleaning, organizing, trying to stay ahead of the sadness. I donated Mom's clothes, sold some old furniture, Ava and Caleb came by once, bringing flowers from their new school. Ava cried when she saw the quilt draped over my sofa, the one Mom used to nap under. "Smells like her," she said, and I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. One rainy Sunday afternoon, I decided to tackle the garage. Boxes stacked high, tools rusted over. One corner still held the outline of something large and low, a forgotten piece of furniture buried beneath canvas and time. When I pulled the tarp off, I found it. Mom's hope chest. Cedar-lined, scratched on the corners, the brass latch rusted but intact. I hadn't seen it since I was a child. Back then, it lived at the foot of her bed. She used to say, "Every woman needs a box to keep her heart safe in." I pulled it out, dragged it into the house, and opened the lid. It smelled like her lavender and lemon oil, and it was packed. Folded sweaters, faded letters tied with ribbon, Polaroids of her and Dad in bell-bottom jeans, and beneath it all at the very bottom, wrapped in a pillowcase stitched with her initials, letters. Dozens of them. All handwritten, all addressed, some to me, some to Tessa, some to my daughters. None had been mailed. I held them like they were relics. The first one I opened was dated 5 years ago. "Rachel is stronger than she knows. I wish I'd told her more often. She gives quietly like her father did. I think that's why she always gets overlooked." My chest ached. I opened another. "Tessa scares me sometimes. I want to believe she loves me, but there's something cold in her. She talks at me, not to me. I know she's hiding things. I know Rachel sees it, but I don't want them to fight. I don't want to choose." Page after page, year after year, her handwriting became shakier, but the thoughts remained sharp, conflicted, loving, honest. She had known. She had seen. Even when she couldn't speak it out loud, she had written it down, preserved it. And then I found it, the letter addressed simply. "To my girls." Inside, she had written, "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone, or no longer myself, and if that's true, then I want to leave behind what I couldn't say when I had the chance. Rachel, you always stayed, even when I pushed you, even when I forgot who you were. You are the reason I felt safe in my final years. Please don't let the world harden you. You were made of gentleness, that's your strength. Tessa, I wish you had stayed longer. I wish I had been stronger. I wish I had said no more often. I know you think strength means success, but sometimes strength is sacrifice. I hope you learn that before it's too late. To you both, I loved you equally, but I saw you differently, and I was afraid of what that would do to you. I was right to be afraid. I hope you find a way back to each other, and if you can't, I hope you find peace anyway. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is memory made quiet." I read that last line over and over. And then I cried harder than I had since the day we lowered her casket into the ground. Not just for the loss, but for all the words we'd never said in life, now preserved on pages that smelled like her perfume. I started the Hope Chest project a week later. A collection of these letters, not just Mom's, but others like them. I invited caregivers to send in their words, their stories, their grief. I partnered with an eldercare nonprofit and began publishing small volumes, Voices Left Behind. Within 6 months, we had over 1,000 submissions. Within a year, a publishing deal. But more than that, we had a community, a place where grief was allowed to speak, where silence was no longer the only language of pain. I signed every first edition with the same line from Mom's letter. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is memory made quiet. And I knew with absolute certainty that she would have been proud. The letter came in winter, no return address, just my name, written in a handwriting I recognized instantly, even through the cold. Tessa. I hadn't seen or heard from her since the day she stood on my doorstep, accusing me of destroying her life, and honestly, I hadn't expected to. Part of me hoped she'd disappeared for good, moved on, let the silence bury everything she couldn't. But the envelope said otherwise. Inside, one simple line. "I want to talk one last time, coffee shop on Maple, Tuesday at 9. No apology, no explanation. Just a request." I thought about ignoring it, tossing it in the fire, pretending she no longer existed. But I couldn't. Not because I wanted her back in my life, I didn't, but because there were still splinters in my chest, old wounds that hadn't quite scarred over, and maybe, just maybe, I needed to hear her say it, out loud. So I went. The coffee shop was mostly empty that morning. Pale winter sunlight spilled across worn wooden tables, the air smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Tessa was already there. She looked thinner, paler, her hair pulled back like she was trying too hard to look put together but couldn't quite pull it off anymore. Her hands shook when she lifted her cup. I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She didn't say hello. Just nodded to the chair across from her. I sat down. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she broke the silence. You look different. So do you. Another silence. She stared at her coffee, then set it down gently, like she was afraid it might break. I lost everything, she said. The house, the car, the school board expelled the kids. Greg filed for divorce. I nodded once, not with satisfaction, just acknowledgement. I deserved most of it, she added. That surprised me. I waited. She took a shaky breath. I used to think I had to be perfect to be loved, that being the successful one meant I was safe, that if I gave enough money, appearances, control, I'd never be left behind. Her voice cracked. But I was always scared of being invisible, of not mattering, and when Mom started slipping, I panicked. I told myself the money didn't matter, that I'd pay it back, that she wouldn't know. She did know, I said. Tessa looked up. I pulled out my phone and tapped on the recording. Mom's voice filled the quiet air. She asked me again. I told her no. I told her this money is for me, for my care, not for them. Tessa closed her eyes. I thought if I could build something with it, it would mean I was still her favorite, she whispered. You weren't, I said softly, but she still loved you. She nodded, biting back tears. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. I found this, addressed to both of us. I never opened it, I couldn't. She slid it across the table. I opened it. Mom's handwriting. To my daughters. You are both pieces of my heart. One soft, one sharp. But together, whole. If you are reading this, I hope you've forgiven each other, or at least tried. Be kind. Love each other fiercely, even when it hurts. I forgive you both. Mom, I couldn't breathe. I looked up at Tessa. Her tears were falling now, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, but I needed you to know I see it now, all of it, what I did, what I became, what I broke. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. She stood, wiped her face, and left the coffee shop without looking back. That was the last time I saw her. I don't know where she went, I never asked. But as I walked home, the letter crumpled in my hand, I whispered a quiet truth to the wind. I don't forgive you yet, but I'm done carrying you. And that was enough. People still ask me if I ever got justice. As if there's some ledger out there, balanced and neat, with names crossed off once the damage is undone. But justice doesn't wear a robe. It doesn't knock on the door with a checklist. It doesn't give you back the nights you sat by your mother's bed, watching her slip away inch by inch while your sister drained her accounts and vanished into silence. What I got wasn't justice. What I got was truth. And that's stronger. After that final coffee shop meeting, I stopped looking over my shoulder. I stopped checking court dockets for Tessa's name. I stopped wondering if another bombshell would drop from the sky. The war was over. I didn't win, not in the clean, movie-ending sense. But I survived. And that matters. I still live in the little fixer-upper 2 towns away. The wildflowers Ava helped me plant in the front yard bloom brighter every spring. She visits sometimes just to talk. Caleb sends me his photographs from college, still lives, portraits, grainy film shots of small towns and big skis. They call me Aunt Rachel. And that alone tells me I did something right. The Hope Chest Project has now published 5 volumes, every one filled with handwritten letters from daughters and sons, spouses and caregivers who gave everything for someone else, and then had to figure out who they were once the giving stopped. We do book tour now, quiet readings in libraries and church basements. Sometimes women come up to me with tears in their eyes and say, "Your story was mine, but I never told it out loud until now." And that makes it worth it. Not because it erases what happened, but because it transforms it. One afternoon, months after everything settled, a box arrived at my door. No note. No return address. Inside was the original blue notebook. The one Tessa had stolen. I turned the pages slowly, hands trembling. All the words were still there, Mom's thoughts, her memories, her fears, her love. But tucked in the back was something new. A blank page. And a post-it. Maybe it's your turn to write now. It was Tessa's handwriting. No apology. Just permission. And strangely, that was enough. I tucked the notebook back into my desk drawer, not as evidence, not as a relic. As a beginning. I no longer think about revenge or courts or what-ifs. I think about the day Mom called me her safe place. I think about the time I read her poetry when she couldn't remember how to hold a pen. I think about love, quiet, stubborn, unglamorous love, and how that, more than anything, is what survives us. So no, I didn't get justice. But I got something stronger. I got peace. And no one can steal that. Not even a sister.